Captain Marcus Rivera stood at the helm of the HMS Defiant, his weathered hands gripping the tactical console as the massive warship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Eden system. The colonial world's usual bustling space traffic was conspicuously absent, replaced by the ominous silence of emergency beacons and the distant flashes of weapons fire. Multiple hostile contacts detected, Captain, Lieutenant Emma Wright called out from her station, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. They match no known signatures in our database. Rivera's jaw tightened as he studied the tactical overlay. The attacking fleet moved with an unsettling precision, their ships arranged in complex geometric patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid crystal. These weren't pirates or raiders, this was a coordinated military force using tactics he'd never seen before. Send out the recognition codes, he ordered, though he already knew the response they'd receive. The Defiant had been patrolling the outer colonies when the distress call came in, making them the closest military vessel to respond. And get me a damage assessment of the colony. The response came moments later, but not in the form of communication. 3 of the alien vessels broke from their formation, accelerating toward the Defiant with impossible speed. Their hulls seemed to ripple and shift, adapting to space conditions in real time. Incoming energy signatures. Wright shouted. They're charging weapons. Rivera's military training kicked in, years of experience condensing into split-second decisions. Launch our drone screen, full-spectrum analysis. I want to know everything about these bastards. Tactical, prepare all defense systems but do not fire unless fired upon. The Defiant's automated defense network sprang to life, releasing swarms of autonomous drones that formed a protective shield around the ship. Each drone was equipped with the latest in human sensor technology, designed to gather data about enemy capabilities while providing an expendable first line of defense. The alien vessels opened fire, their weapons releasing streams of coherent energy that seemed to twist and bend through space in ways that defied conventional physics. The drone screen absorbed the first salvos, sacrificing themselves to protect the Defiant while gathering crucial combat data. Sir, Commander James Chen called out from the science station, these energy readings are extraordinary. Their weapons aren't just destroying our drones, they're somehow unmaking them at the quantum level. Rivera processed this information as he watched another wave of attacks tear through space. They're testing us, he realized aloud. These aren't their primary weapons. They're analyzing our defensive capabilities just like we're analyzing theirs. The realization had barely left his lips when the main communication screen flared to life. The being that appeared was humanoid in basic form, but its skin had the same liquid crystal appearance as its ships. When it spoke, its voice resonated through the bridge with an artificial harmony that set everyone's teeth on edge. We are the Nexar Dominion, it announced. Your species has been evaluated and found lacking in the qualities necessary for continued autonomous existence. Submit to integration into our collective consciousness, or face immediate termination. Rivera's response was immediate and characteristically human. This is Captain Marcus Rivera of the United Earth Fleet. You are attacking a civilian colony in violation of all known space laws. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences of your actions. The Nexar representative's form shifted, patterns of light rippling across its surface in what might have been amusement. Laws? We are beyond your primitive concepts of jurisdiction. We are the natural evolution of consciousness itself. Your resistance is. It paused, as if searching for the right word, historically insignificant. As the transmission cut off, Rivera turned to his crew. Send everything we've learned about their weapons and defenses to Fleet Command. And get me a secure channel to the colony's defense forces. He paused, studying the tactical display where more enemy ships were moving into attack positions. They think they've got us figured out, that they can predict exactly how we'll respond. A grim smile crossed his face. Time to show them why that's always been humanity's greatest advantage, we're really good at proving people wrong. The battle for New Eden was about to begin, and with it, humanity's first major interstellar war. But as Rivera prepared his ship and crew for combat, he couldn't help but feel a surge of determination. The Nexar Dominion was about to learn what countless others throughout human history had discovered the hard way: underestimating humanity's capacity for adaptation was always a fatal mistake. The Defiance bridge erupted in controlled chaos as the first wave of Nexar ships launched their assault. Commander Chen's fingers flew across his console, analyzing the flood of data from their sacrificed drone screen. His eyes widened as patterns emerged from the chaos. "Captain, I've identified something crucial about their attack formations," Chen announced, pulling up a holographic display. "The Nexar ships aren't just moving in harmony, they're quantum entangled. Each ship is literally part of a single consciousness." Rivera studied the intricate patterns of enemy movement, years of tactical experience combining with this new information. "So they're not just coordinating their attacks. They're functioning as a single organism," Chen finished. "Their ships are like neurons in a vast neural network. It's incredibly efficient, but it makes them vulnerable," Rivera interrupted, a plan already forming. "Lieutenant Wright, get me a secure channel to Dr. Aria Santos in engineering. It's time to test that crazy theory of hers." Deep in the Defiance engineering section, Dr. Santos had been waiting for this call. The brilliant quantum physicist had spent years developing what many considered to be a dead-end technology, the quantum desynchronization field. The scientific community had dismissed it as impractical, but Rivera had seen its potential. "Dr. Santos here, Captain," her voice came through, tinged with barely contained excitement. "Please tell me we're finally going to test my baby." "Your quantum disruptor just went from theoretical to essential," Rivera replied. "How fast can you get it online?" "Give me 10 minutes to warm up the primary coils." "But Captain, I should warn you, we've never tested this at full power. The effects could be unpredictable." Rivera watched as another colony defense platform succumbed to the Nexar's weapons. "Unpredictable is exactly what we need right now, Doctor. You have 5 minutes." As Santos and her team worked, the battle continued to unfold. The Nexar ships moved with their characteristic precision, but Rivera noticed something interesting: they never took unnecessary risks. Their tactics were perfect, almost mathematically so, but they lacked the one thing that had defined human warfare for millennia: innovation. "All hands, this is the captain," Rivera broadcast shipwide. "In 4 minutes, we're going to try something that's either brilliant or insane. Probably both. Secure all stations and prepare for potential spatial distortions." Commander Chen looked up from his station. "Sir, the colony's outer defenses are almost completely gone. The Nexar are beginning their approach to the primary habitation domes. They're about to learn why humans still train for chaos," Rivera responded. "Dr. Santos, status?" "Quantum disruptor at 80% and climbing," Santos reported. "But sir, I should mention that this could affect our systems too. We'll need to run on isolated conventional circuits for at least 30 seconds after activation." Rivera nodded grimly. "Helm, plot us a course right through the heart of their formation. Lieutenant Wright, prepare to divert all power to shields the moment we activate the disruptor. Commander Chen, I want every sensor we have recording what happens next. The fleet's going to want to know exactly how this plays out." The Defiance surged forward, its conventional engines pushing it toward the geometric perfection of the Nexar battle formation. The enemy ships began to adjust, their movements suggesting they were preparing to envelop the human vessel in a deadly crossfire. "They think they can predict exactly what we're going to do," Rivera commented, watching the enemy movements. "Time to introduce them to human chaos theory. Dr. Santos, now." The quantum disruptor activated with a pulse that seemed to distort reality itself. For a brief moment, space appeared to fold and ripple around the Defiant. Then the effect reached the Nexar ships. The result was immediate and spectacular. The perfect formation of alien vessels suddenly shattered as their quantum entanglement was disrupted. Ships that had been moving in perfect harmony suddenly found themselves operating independently for the first time, their crews struggling to function without their collective consciousness. By all that's holy, Chen breathed, watching his displays. Their entire command and control structure is collapsing. They're trying to re-establish their neural network, but the disruptor is preventing any quantum coherence. Rivera allowed himself a small smile. Humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to function in chaos. Send word to the colony's defenders, concentrate fire on any ship showing signs of confusion. It's time to show the Nexar why trying to predict human behavior is a losing strategy. As the battle turned, Rivera couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The Nexar's greatest strength, their perfect unity and coordination, had become their greatest weakness when faced with humanity's embrace of chaos and individual initiative. The next phase of the battle was about to begin, and for the first time since the invasion started, humanity had a fighting chance. The quantum disruption had thrown the Nexar fleet into disarray, but Rivera knew they wouldn't stay disorganized forever. Already, some of the alien ships were adapting, attempting to establish conventional communication methods to coordinate their actions. The Defiant's tactical displays showed the enemy fleet breaking into smaller, independent groups, a sign that the Nexar were learning to operate without their quantum network. Dr. Santos, Rivera called over the comm, "How long can we maintain the disruption field?" "Another 20 minutes at most," she replied, her voice strained. "The power requirements are enormous, and we're seeing some stress fractures in the emission array." Commander Chen looked up from his science station. "Sir, the Nexar ships are implementing some kind of adaptive shielding. They're learning to compensate for the disruption effect." Rivera nodded, unsurprised. "They're evolving their tactics." "Good. Lieutenant Wright, send the signal to New Eden's defense forces. Execute Operation Hornet's Nest." Across the battlefield, the remaining colonial defense platforms suddenly powered down, appearing to go offline. The Nexar ships, operating now in smaller tactical groups, began to advance toward what they perceived as disabled defenses. It was exactly what Rivera had been waiting for. "Now," he commanded. The seemingly dead defense platforms erupted to life, but not as the large, obvious targets they had been before. Each platform split apart into dozens of smaller, heavily armed drones, their designs based on old Earth guerrilla warfare tactics. These weren't the sophisticated quantum-based weapons the Nexar had faced before, they were simple, brutal, and highly effective. "Launching Swarm Pattern Delta," Wright announced. Colonial militia forces responding in kind. The space around New Eden transformed into a chaos of small-unit warfare. Human drone swarms, piloted by both AI and colonial militia members, darted between the larger Nexar vessels. Their attacks weren't coordinated in the precise, predictable patterns the aliens expected. Instead, each group operated independently, striking targets of opportunity with conventional weapons that bypassed the Nexar's sophisticated defenses. "They're not used to this kind of fighting," Chen observed, watching the Nexar's confused response. "Their tactical computers can't predict where the next attack will come from because there is no pattern to predict." Rivera smiled grimly. Humanity learned a long time ago that sometimes the best way to fight a superior force is to make the battle too messy for their superiority to matter. "Dr. Santos, prepare to pulse the quantum disruptor." "Pulse it, sir." "That could burn out the entire system. Better than losing it entirely when it fails. Time it with our drone strikes. Let's keep them guessing." The battle evolved into something that defied conventional space combat doctrine. The Defiant, still maintaining its disruption field, became the anchor point for what Rivera had started calling orbital guerrilla warfare. Colonial militia ships, no longer trying to match the Nexar's superior technology, instead relied on centuries of human experience in asymmetric warfare. A group of Nexar ships would begin to adapt to the disruption field, only to have it pulse stronger for 30 seconds, throwing their systems into chaos again. As they recovered, they'd face attacks from multiple directions by weapons that should have been far too primitive to threaten them. But the sheer number and variety of attacks overwhelmed their ability to analyze and respond effectively. "Sir," Wright called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Nexar command ship. They're requesting a parley." The bridge crew fell silent. Rivera studied the tactical display, noting how the once perfect formation of the Nexar fleet had devolved into scattered groups, each trying to fight a type of battle they had never encountered before. "Put them through," he ordered, straightening his uniform. The same crystalline figure appeared on screen, but its perfect symmetry was now disturbed, patterns flowing chaotically across its surface. "Captain Rivera," it began, its harmonious voice now displaying distinct notes of confusion, "we wish to understand." "Understand what? How do you function like this? Your attacks have no pattern, no unified purpose. Your tactics defy strategic analysis. Yet you are succeeding. This should not be possible." Rivera leaned forward in his chair. "That's humanity's true strength. We don't need everything to make perfect sense. We've spent our entire history learning to thrive in chaos, to adapt when plans fail, to find opportunities in disorder. Each human in this battle is fighting their own way, thinking for themselves, making decisions based on the situation in front of them rather than some perfect strategic formula." The Nexar representative's form rippled with what might have been distress. "But how can you coordinate? How can you achieve victory without perfect unity?" "That's the point," Rivera replied. "We don't need perfect unity. We just need a common goal and the freedom to figure out how to achieve it. Now, shall we discuss terms for your withdrawal from this system?" As the negotiation began, Rivera couldn't help but reflect on the irony. The Nexar had come to this battle believing their superior technology and perfect coordination made victory inevitable. Instead, they were being forced to retreat by an enemy that turned their greatest strength into a weakness, simply by refusing to fight the way they expected. The negotiations with the Nexar had been a ruse. As soon as the quantum disruption field had powered down for maintenance, their fleet regrouped with frightening speed, their ships once again moving with that uncanny synchronized precision. But this time, Rivera was counting on it. "Dr. Santos," Rivera called over the comm, his eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the reforming Nexar fleet. "Tell me you got what we needed." "More than we needed, Captain," the quantum physicist replied, excitement evident in her voice. "During the disruption, we managed to capture detailed scans of their quantum network in various states of degradation. Commander Chen needs to see this immediately." Chen was already heading to engineering before Rivera could give the order. The Defiant shuddered as it absorbed another volley from the regrouped Nexar forces, their attacks now focused on preventing the human vessel from reactivating its disruption field. "Status report," Rivera demanded, watching as the colonial defense forces fell back into predetermined positions. "Shields at 60%, Wright reported. The Nexar have adapted their weapons to our defensive frequencies. They're learning, sir. Fast." Rivera nodded grimly. They all knew the quantum disruptor had been a one-time advantage. The Nexar were too advanced not to develop countermeasures. But that's exactly what he'd been counting on. In engineering, Chen stared at the data scrolling across Dr. Santos's screens, his expression shifting from confusion to understanding to something approaching awe. "It's not just a communication network," he breathed. "Their entire civilization is built on quantum entanglement. Their ships, their weapons, even their bodies, they're all part of one massive quantum computer." "Exactly," Santos confirmed. "And look at these patterns during the disruption. They didn't just lose coordination, their entire consciousness started to fragment. But here's the fascinating part." She pulled up another display. "They've actually evolved to be dependent on quantum coherence. When we disrupt it, we're not just blocking their communication, we're threatening their very existence." Chen's eyes widened as he understood the implications. They're not just working together, they can't work separately. They've forgotten how. Back on the bridge, Rivera listened as Chen and Santos explained their discovery. Each piece of the puzzle was falling into place. The Nexar's apparent superiority, their perfect coordination, their inability to comprehend human chaos, it all stemmed from their complete dependence on quantum coherence. So when we disrupted their network, Rivera began. We weren't just interfering with their communication, Santos finished. We were forcing them to exist as individuals. Something they haven't done for possibly thousands of years. The psychological shock alone must have been devastating. That's why they pulled back to regroup, Chen added. They weren't just reforming their battle lines, they were literally pulling themselves back together into a single consciousness. Rivera leaned forward in his chair, a plan forming. And if we could disrupt their quantum coherence on a larger scale? Their entire civilization would fragment, Santos confirmed. But Captain, the power requirements would be astronomical. We'd need every ship in the fleet, and even then. We don't need to disrupt their entire civilization, Rivera interrupted. We just need to make them believe we can. He turned to Wright. Open a channel to the Nexar command ship. The crystalline figure appeared once again, its surface now showing complex patterns that seemed to ripple with barely contained anxiety. Before it could speak, Rivera held up a hand. We understand now, he said simply. We understand what you are, what you truly are. And we know how to end you, not just defeat you, but end your entire existence as a unified consciousness. The figure's surface patterns became chaotic. You are attempting deception. Am I? Rivera nodded to Santos, who transmitted a carefully selected portion of their scan data. This is what happened to your quantum network during our first disruption. Now imagine that effect amplified 1,000 times, spread across every Nexar ship, every colony, every quantum-entangled consciousness in your empire. You'd cease to exist as a unified being. You'd fragment into billions of individual consciousnesses, each forced to think and exist, alone. The horror that rippled across the Nexar representative's form was almost palpable. You would not. Such an action would be genocide. No, Rivera corrected. It would be evolution. The same process you've been forcing on other species. The strong adapt, remember? Well, we've adapted. We found your weakness. Now you have a choice: withdraw from this system, leave human space entirely, or face an enemy that can turn your greatest strength into your ultimate vulnerability. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity. Rivera held his breath, knowing they were walking a knife's edge. If the Nexar called their bluff, we will withdraw, the figure finally announced, its harmonious voice subdued. But know this, humans, you have not seen the last of the Nexar dominion. We will adapt. We will evolve. I'm counting on it, Rivera replied. Because that's what living species do. They change. They grow. They learn to exist in new ways. Maybe next time we meet, we'll both have something to teach each other. As the Nexar fleet began their withdrawal, Rivera turned to his crew. Send word to New Eden's defense forces. The immediate threat is over, but our work is just beginning. Something tells me the galaxy just got a lot more interesting. The bridge crew shared knowing looks. They had just witnessed the beginning of a new era in human history, one where humanity's greatest strength had proven to be not their technology or their weapons, but their ability to understand and adapt to their enemies' weaknesses. The war wasn't over, but the first battle had been won with something uniquely human, the ability to turn chaos into advantage. 3 days after the Nexar withdrawal, the HMS Defiant orbited New Eden, its crew working alongside colonial engineers to strengthen the planet's defenses. Captain Rivera stood in the ship's observation deck, watching as construction drones swarmed around new defensive platforms, one specifically designed to generate quantum disruption fields. The quantum shield network will be operational within the week, Dr. Santos reported as she joined him at the window. Her usual lab coat was stained with engine grease, evidence of the long hours she'd spent helping implement the new defense system. Every major colony in human space will have one within the month. Rivera nodded, his eyes tracking the movement of the construction drones. And the Nexar? Long-range sensors show them regrouping at the edge of known space, Commander Chen answered, entering the observation deck with a datapad in hand. But they're not retreating to their territory. They're changing. The tactical display Chen brought up showed hundreds of Nexar ships arranged in new formations, patterns that seemed to combine their previous geometric precision with something else, something almost organic in nature. They're adapting, Rivera observed. Just like they said they would. But so are we, Santos added, pulling up her own data. The insights we gain from studying their quantum network have advanced our understanding of quantum physics by decades. We're already developing new technologies based on what we learned. Not to copy their methods, but to find our own path. Rivera smiled. The Nexar had come to human space believing they represented the peak of evolution, that their perfect unity and technological superiority made them unstoppable. Instead, they'd encountered a species that thrived on diversity, chaos, and continuous adaptation. "Captain," Wright's voice came over the comm, "we're receiving a transmission from Fleet Command. Priority 1. The three officers made their way to the bridge, where Admiral Helena Yoshida's hologram awaited them. Her expression was serious but carried a hint of excitement. "Captain Rivera," she began, "the Defense Council has reviewed your encounter with the Nexar Dominion. Your actions didn't just save New Eden, they've given us a fighting chance against what might be the most advanced civilization we've ever encountered. Thank you, Admiral, but it was a team effort. Dr. Santos's quantum disruptor is precisely why I'm contacting you," Yoshida interrupted. "We're establishing a new division within the fleet, the Adaptive Warfare Development Group. Its mission will be to combine human ingenuity with the technological insights we've gained from the Nexar encounter. I want the Defiant and her crew to spearhead this initiative." Rivera glanced at his officers, seeing the same mix of surprise and determination on their faces that he felt. "What exactly are you proposing, Admiral?" "The Nexar showed us that there's more than one path to advancement," Yoshida explained. "They chose perfect unity and quantum entanglement. But humanity's strength has always been in our diversity, our ability to think independently while still working together. I want you to help us develop technologies and tactics that enhance these natural advantages. You want us to create a specifically human way of advancing," Santos realized aloud, her mind already racing with possibilities. "Exactly. The Nexar will return, and when they do, they'll be stronger. But they'll still be thinking as a collective, trying to predict and counter what they believe we'll do. Our advantage will always be our unpredictability, our ability to have millions of minds working on problems in millions of different ways." Rivera straightened, feeling the weight of the moment. "When do we begin?" "Immediately. Your first mission is already being prepared. We've detected unusual quantum signatures at the edge of the Arcturus sector. They're not Nexar, but they're definitely not human either." The implications were clear. The galaxy was larger and more complex than humanity had imagined, filled with civilizations that had chosen different paths of evolution and advancement. The Nexar were just the beginning. "One more thing," Yoshida added, her expression softening slightly. "The Defiant's actions have been declassified. The public needs to know that when faced with a technologically superior enemy, humanity's greatest weapons weren't our ships or our guns, they were our creativity, our adaptability, and our unwavering determination to forge our own path." As the transmission ended, Rivera turned to his crew. The bridge was silent for a moment as they all processed the implications of their new mission. They had not just survived an encounter with an advanced alien civilization, they had proven that humanity's unique characteristics were not weaknesses to be overcome, but strengths to be embraced. "Dr. Santos," Rivera finally said, "how do you feel about pushing the boundaries of quantum physics even further?" The physicist's eyes lit up with excitement. As long as we do it our way, Captain. No hive minds, no perfect unity, just human ingenuity and a healthy dose of controlled chaos. Commander Chen, plot a course for the Arcturus sector, Rivera ordered, settling into his command chair. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity can really do. As the Defiant prepared to jump to hyperspace, Rivera reflected on how much had changed in just a few days. The Nexar had arrived believing they represented the pinnacle of evolution, only to discover that there were other paths to advancement, paths that embraced chaos, celebrated diversity, and turned unpredictability into an asset. The next chapter in human history was about to begin, and for the first time, humanity was stepping into the galaxy not as underdogs, but as innovators who had proven that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe wasn't perfect unity or advanced technology, it was the simple, chaotic, wonderful complexity of being human.